Well, this is certainly a thing. Yes, indeed, it's a thing. Yes, a thing. A thing on your screen. What sort of a thing is it? Looks like a thing for the punk rock flea market coming up in Southern Connecticut on October 23rd of this year. And you might say, well, why am I seeing this thing on my screen, and why is there a disembodied voice talking about it as it hovers shakily and uncertainly on my screen? Well, I think you know the answer. It's because it's me, Malcolm Tent, bringing you this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Yeah, coming right at you, kids. Live every Wednesday on the Facebook. 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the good old US of A, baby. Live to you direct from the Bon Air Chicken Farm in the environs of Greater Danbury. Excuse me, folks. As usual, I'm all choked up. As usual, I will not let that stop me from talking tunes with you. Wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be here tonight live, but as you can see, I am now definitely 100% sure that I am here and that I am live and that it is happening. I went out to the devotional fan gathering of DEVO fans, which occurred at the Beachland Ballroom this past weekend in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was, as always, almost too much fun to bear. And originally I thought maybe I would go west, young men and young women, continue on my westward journey and visit some friends in the Detroit area and hit all the record stores in towns within striking distance of Detroit, of which there are quite a few. But turns out that I had a recording session scheduled for Thursday. Excuse me, a recording session paid for by a label, and since it's being paid for, it's definitely gauche to bag out on it. I think it's gauche to bag out on a recording session anyway, or a rehearsal, or a gig. It's like, if it's on the calendar, you do it. But doubly, triply so when it's on someone else's nickel. Then there is a definite moral obligation to show up. So instead of going out west, I just headed my nose back east and visited some record stores in Rochester and Buffalo. We'll talk about some of the scores that I found while I was doing all this record storing. And made it home in time to talk tunes here on a Wednesday and do the recording session on a Thursday. That's the way I like to roll. A toast of Danbury Tap to getting things done. Let's take a quick look at the monitor and see if the internet is getting things done. How's it looking on the internet? Oh yes, people are tuned in. People are, excuse me, checking in. And as always, when I look at the monitor, I can't see exactly who's there. I can see indeed that you are there. We've got Clinton from Florida. We got James from Connecticut. Pear from the great state of Sweden, and Ray from Tucson, Arizona. All right, let's check the bulletin board first and see what's happening here, there, and everywhere. Well, as you saw by my fabulous introductory card, we've got a brand new event on the bulletin board, the Punk Rock Flea Market, the spooky version, which is occurring October 23rd. Of this year, just a little over a month from the minute that I'm speaking these words. This is going to be at the original Southington Drive-In Theater in Southington, and if this event is anywhere near as big and good and fantastic and fun as the last one, we're all going to be happy people. I will be set up under a 10 by 10 tent. That is a 10 by 10 tent. Haha. Under what will hopefully be a clear blue autumn sky in New England. I will have 2 tables full of records, tapes, CDs, and various ephemera, which it will be my job to exchange to you for some good green American currency, or credit card, or PayPal, or Venmo, or whatever it is that fuels your boiler. You bring it on home to Old Man Tent, and we will do a honest to God good exchange of goods. Records for bucks, tapes for dollars, CDs for cents. I will be loaded for bear. So October 23rd, Punk Rock Flea Market, Southington at the drive-in theater in Southington. Prior to that, I will be on the road with my good pal Tim Holhouse, playing a series of acoustic shows in the New England area. First one is October 12th at Molten Java in Bethel, Connecticut, my favorite all-ages room in all of Connecticut to play. And we will be opening up the tour, the festivities, the proceedings there at Molten Java. October 12th is an early show, 4 to 6 p.m. We'll say 4:30 to 6 p.m., a matinee. It's a Wednesday, I know that, but for all of you people out there who maybe have some paid time off from your jobs, or are going to be home after school when the kids get home, come on out to Molten Java and see me and Tim Holhouse strutting our acoustic stuff. October 12th at Molten Java. And from there we go to Bell Tower Records in Adams, Massachusetts. We go to Willimantic Records in Willimantic, Connecticut. As the days tick by, I will have a full itinerary for you to study. What else is going on? Well, November, we've of course got the big rock and roll weekend in November. November 3rd in Wilmington, North Carolina. November 4th in Jacksonville, Florida. November 5th in Tampa, Florida. Anti-Scene. The new all-star ultra lineup of Anti-Scene makes its stage debut the weekend of November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So do whatever you got to do. Saddle up a camel, get a hitch on the mule, take a train, plane, automobile, bus, dog cart, pony ride, get on a jet, flap your wings and fly as fast as you can. Get thee hence to Wilmington, Jacksonville, and or Tampa the weekend of November 3rd, because it's going to happen. And we meaning Anti-Scene, mean business. I mean, we always do, but we mean business. November 5th in Danbury. It is the Danbury Record and CD Expo in the exciting new location, VFW Hall number 149, off Exit 8 in downtown Danbury. Record shows were meant to happen at VFW halls as far as I'm concerned, which is why I'm really stoked about the brand new location for the Danbury Record and CD Expo. We're going to have a room full of dealers dealing records, tapes, CDs, memorabilia, all that good stuff, all live, all in person, all in a VFW hall on November 5th. I co-promote the event. I will not be there in person, but I will be there in spirit, egging you on to look through every single box, to dig through every single crate in the room on November 5th. And you guys are actually kind of lucky, because you'll have one less competitor digging through the crates. You know, all those goodies that I'd be picking out for myself, you have a fair shot at now. So November 5th, kids, Danbury Record and CD Expo. A toast. When you're there at the VFW hall, you can actually go into one of the bathrooms, or maybe you can stop in at the bar and ask them to draw a jug of genuine Danbury tap for you. That is a rare opportunity. Authentic Danbury tap from a VFW spigot. How cool is that? Let's see here. We got people. Oh, we got Dwayne from Australia tuned in. Hello, Dwayne. And a few others. Bob from Brookfield. Mike from Vancouver. Nick. And a veritable horde of others. Excuse me. All right, we've looked at the bulletin board. Let's check the mailbox. I was very excited to see that I got a big, fat envelope with a New York City return address on it, and a sort of rattle on the inside. I was like, what could this be? And I looked at the return address. It was from my good pal Nancy in New York City. Nancy is an old friend of mine. She is a punk rock lawyer. She was in New York City in the early 1980s, right when things were happening, like right when the Bad Brains hit town for the first time, right when the Stimulators were at full force, right when bands like Agnostic Front were just starting out. A very exciting time to be in New York City in the music scene. And she had a little fanzine called News Shorts, and because of that, people would send her all kinds of records and tapes and stuff to review. And I was recently tasked with digitizing a bunch of her old demo tapes, which I did. And man, there's some good stuff in that collection. Oh boy, howdy. I'll have to do a show and tell on some of that on a later episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I already showed and told one or two things off of it, but I could go real in-depth on this one. And guess what? As a sort of completion gift, a completion bonus, she sent me a genuine, honest-to-gosh bag of goji berries! Yes! First time in my life I've ever gotten goji berries in the mail. I love my goji berries. So Nancy, if you're watching, I doubt that you are because you don't do Facebook and social media, and I'm sure you don't do YouTube either, but even if by some bizarre chance you are, I got the gojis, so thank you very much. I appreciate it greatly. I will be gobbling these things down probably a lot faster than I should because they're so yummy, delicious, and nutritious. Gojis. What else did we get in the mail? We got the latest issue of Bridge and Tunnel Crowd, New Haven's finest rabble-rousing rag, an authentic schmata out of the hallowed halls, not of Yale, but the reality of New Haven. Yes, indeed. You've got all kinds of great art, politics, and a very skewed sense of humor going on here in the Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. Authentic printed zine. I love it. Thank you guys for sending me that. I will be reading it from cover to cover ASAP. Promesa. Soy promesa. What else did we get in the mail? Well, we got one other little item in the mail, and this is kind of a cryptic item. Packaged in a transparent square sleeve. This is a very small transparent record. How small is it? I'll show you how small it is. You compare it to and this is just maybe a little bit of a spoiler, here's a CD. There's the record. It's the size of a CD. This is a 5-inch, count them, 5-inch hand-lathed record of a brand new project of mine entitled, and I guess this is kind of a spoiler, the Malcolm Tent Power Duo featuring Paul Ledney. Who's Paul Ledney, you might ask? Paul Ledney is the guiding light behind America's first ever black metal band, Profanatica. Profanatica are from Brewster, New York. A lot of people, and I've always said arguably America's first ever black metal band, but I've never heard a convincing argument otherwise that any other band in the U.S. was playing black metal before Profanatica. So I'm going to go ahead and say they were the first. And they're from one town over, man. Brewster, New York is just across the line from Danbury. So I'm very excited to be working with Paul Ledney on this one. This is basically him on drums and myself on keyboards. Keyboards! Think about that. And my usual bag of really weird and heavy production tricks. So this is going to be a limited edition of 50, that's 50 copies in hi-fi stereo. I gave this thing a test listen yesterday and it sounded thunderous. You wouldn't think a little 5-inch record could sound that good. They only hold about a maximum of 2.5 minutes per side, but since the song was 2.5 minutes long, it was perfect. Thunderous hi-fi stereo, Malcolm Tent Power Duo featuring Paul Ledney. This thing is going to shake your foundations. And I've given it the official approval. I expect to have copies in hand probably around mid-December, just in time for the holiday season. Put one of these under your tree and watch it die. Results guaranteed. That's the mail. That's the bulletin board. Let's talk tunes. As mentioned before, I was in Ohio for the annual Devotional DEVO fan gathering. And this year's devotional was the biggest one yet. Quite possibly the best one yet. Certainly one that generated an awful lot of excitement. In no small part because we had not only our regular guests of honor, Jerry Casale, the co-founder of DEVO, the co-inventor of the DEVO concept. Jerry was there, as he usually is, to sign autographs all day, pose for pictures all day, do a question and answer session, and even occasionally sit in with one of the bands that play. So having the co-founder and co-creator of DEVO itself there is always a big deal and a real honor. Not only that, we had, as we quite often do, David Kendrick, stellar all-star drummer. David Kendrick was in Sparks for a number of years. He played on their seminal new wave albums and then went directly from Sparks to DEVO and did a long stint with DEVO from 1987 to approximately 1996, and then off and on since then. Hell of a drummer, another great guy who will sign and pose and answer questions and sit in. And that's where I got very excited, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Not only that, we had Steve Bartek from Wall of Voodoo as a guest. We had a guy, I can never remember if it's Schwartz or Schwartzman. I think it's Schwartz. Michael Schwartz, the actor who played Rod Reuter in DEVO's classic short film called Roll Out the Barrel. We had Rod Reuter at the devotional, and he was great. He was a firecracker, man. That guy kept the party going. And we also had, for the first time ever, Mark Mothersbaugh, the frontman, public face, and most easily recognizable figure of DEVO, the lead vocalist, keyboardist, the guy up in front, sweating and working hard to bring de-evolution to the masses. So we had 3 members of DEVO and 1 peripheral player and another peripheral player all at one event, and it was great. And when you had a lineup like that, what do you get? Sold out. You get a sold out house. It was for the first time ever in the 22-year history of Devotional, completely sold out. And that was a very good feeling. You know, I'm not even like officially a promoter or anything. I don't really have anything to do with the real nuts and bolts of running Devotional, but I've been going to it since day one. I've only missed one ever due to circumstances that were not in my control. I've been there for every single one of them except for one, and so I feel very tightly knit with the event, and I feel very bound up in it. So I feel comfortable saying we, because it's just that kind of a thing. When you've been there for so long, you sort of look at it very personally. So I'm extremely happy that we had such a great turnout with such a hardcore DEVO lineup of guests. And this devotional ended up being a real career highlight for myself, which we will talk about in about a minute. But first I'm going to check the monitor, because I see the comments are coming on in. Gary Childs has corrected me. Thank you, Gary. Steve Bartek was in Oingo Boingo, not Wall of Voodoo. See, I've told you guys in the past, and I'll reiterate it again, I'm not Wikipedia, I'm not a fact checker, I'm just a dude with a very soggy, poor memory. So I rely on you folks to set me straight. So thank you, Gary. He was definitely an Oingo Boingo, not Wall of Voodoo. He said Oingo Boingo probably about 3,000 times on Saturday. You know, it's just one of those things. James Pogo has pointed out that David Kendrick was also in the Gleaming Spires, very important LA new wave band, along with Bates Motel. He is currently the drummer of XIU. That is XIU XIU. XIU. David Kendrick is in that band now too, which is pretty damn cool. So yeah, man, Lots going on, and it led to a career highlight for me, but we'll get to that in a minute. My modus operandus whenever I go on the road is to maximize, to use every mile, every minute as wisely and as efficiently and as completely as I possibly can. Yes, it would be very, very worthwhile to simply hop in a tent mobile and drive out to Cleveland, do devotional, and drive back. But I can't do that. I'm not good at being idle. I'm not good at all when it comes to sitting around and doing nothing. So if I'm going to drive out to Cleveland, I'm going to get every ounce of efficacy out of it that I can. So what does that mean? That means that I load up my vehicle with product on my label, TPOS. TPOS. I load the car up with TPOS stuff, primarily vinyl and cassettes. And I go to every single town between where I am and where I'm going, and then where I'm going and where I'm going afterwards. I hit every single record store that I can and do business. And it is one of my great joys, one of the absolute pleasures of my job, to walk into a record store with some of my stuff and walk out of the record store with less of my stuff, more money, and if all goes well, some really cool records and things that I can take home with me and either sell to you people or keep for myself. Maybe both. Either way, it's a lot of fun. And so on this trip, I hit record stores in Akron, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Buffalo, New York, and Rochester, New York. And of course, I was set up at the devotional with my merch table. And because of that, I got some really cool things that I traded with people. So it's just a bonanza of really neat objects coming my way, all of which I'm happy to share with you now virtually on Tent Talks Tunes. Now, some of you folks might know, and I've done episodes of Tent Talks Tunes on my mania for really weird, bizarre formats. You know, you get beyond records and tapes and CDs, you get into VHS, beta, 8-tracks, reel-to-reel tapes, play tapes, 4-tracks, dictation discs, wire recordings. I just love weird, obscure, arcane formats. The more obsolete, the better. Excuse me. And possibly my favorite is the 8-track cartridge. And this was a good trip for Old Man Tent because I came back with a couple of really cool 8-tracks. I hardly ever find cool 8-tracks when I'm out there in the field, but I found 2 on this trip. 2 of them. One of them, hope you guys can see this, my eye was drawn immediately to this when I saw it. The very badly printed, terribly laid out, cheesy generic graphics, right on rock. It's got some guy singing his guts out on the front, but nobody knows who it is. It's in very tasteless, garish sort of purple and white with lots of little frillies and filigrees and half circles that serve no purpose whatsoever graphically. Man, I love this stuff. Masterpiece of bad layout. And imagine my surprise and my delight. I hope you guys can see what this is. This is Kiss, Dressed to Kill, with more absolutely worthless graphics on the spine. I don't think the resolution's very high, but see if we can zoom in on that. You can kind of make out that it's Kiss, Dressed to Kill, and that it's definitely not an official Casablanca product. This is one of those great truck stop counterfeit 8-tracks that used to be so prevalent in the 70s and even up into the early 80s. What's even better about this one, even better, not only has it got the terrible generic artwork, and not only is it probably very badly recorded, if you read the fine print, and you always got to read the fine print on these truck stop counterfeits, today's top hits, simulating the styles of your favorite artists. As a sentence, that's at best a sentence fragment. Today's top hits, simulating the styles of your favorite artists. One can certainly imply by that very poorly worded disclaimer that this is not really Kiss doing Dress to Kill, but instead a bunch of those soulless, faceless, minimum wage studio musicians doing a really quick, cheap rendition of the entire album of Dress to Kill. I haven't played this yet. I really hope that's what it is. That would make my day. It's really cool that already that it's a truck stop counterfeit with lousy art. But if this actually does turn out to be like generic studio hack renditions of an entire album worth of Kiss songs, that's going to be worth writing home about. That's going to be worth getting on the Telegraph about. Because I found a few of these things that are like this, and oh boy, they stink the place up when you play them. I found one that was a, quote, tribute to Bette Midler. And I don't know who they roped off of what street corner to sing these Bette Midler songs, but that lady was badly strung out on something and definitely in need of some quick cash to get a quick something to make herself feel better. Wow. Impossibly horrible. I love it. Love it. On the other hand, I found one of these which was supposed to be a faceless, nameless, cheap studio hack doing an entire album of Telly Savalas songs. Now, if you ever heard the Telly Savalas records, they're bad enough. I mean, the Telly Savalas records are bad enough on their own, but the idea of some minimum wage newscaster or weather reporter doing a bunch of Telly Savalas records, that had me soaring to heaven on rocket number 9, baby. I was ready to go. Imagine my shock and disappointment when I plugged that 8-track into the player and it was just the regular studio versions of the Telly Savalas songs. As bad as they are, it was not what I thought it was going to be, man. It was the real deal and not a cheap imitation. Thumbs down. I mean, I kept it anyway because the packaging, as I just was waxing rhapsodic about, the packaging was terrible. The concept was priceless. But it was actually Telly on there and not some fake bullshit. Very disappointing. I'm going to drown my sorrows now with some Danbury Tap at the thought of that. And I'll mention that it's a phenomenon almost exclusively unique to 8-track. You very, very rarely see cassettes or LPs that are like this, the cheap counterfeit knockoffs. You do see LPs on occasion. I can honestly say I've only seen like maybe 1 or 2 cassettes ever. But 8-track was definitely the format for this really ridiculous bottom-of-the-barrel exploitation, the type of which makes the music industry go round, which is why I salute it. Another 8-track, another very good thing to find on 8-track. How about this? How about Joe Jackson? I'm the man on 8-track. How cool is that? New Wave on 8-track from 1979. 8-tracks were still a force in 1979. They were kind of waning by then, but they were still definitely a force in the marketplace. And so to have Joe Jackson on 8-track, although it's kind of absurd on the face of it because it's not your average 8-track fare, which is, yes, Foghat, Led Zeppelin, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, you know what I mean. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean. That's your usual 8-track fare. Led Zeppelin, Joe Jackson, baby. 8-track New Wave. Not only that, it's an RCA Record Club 8-track with its own unique graphic design and its own unique. Actually, they do use the A&M style of graphics on the spine, but quite often they have their own cheesy in-house graphics. That's real A&M artwork, and that's pretty cool. That's really got like the stark black on white, the kind of pointless negative dead space there, the typeface. That's really neat. And it's 8-track. I've got a whole bunch of new wave and punk rock 8-tracks. There aren't many things that I actively collect. I keep saying, but punk rock and new wave on 8-track, you better believe it. So this was a real good find. I got this in Rochester at House of Guitars. Very happy about that. And since I'm dropping names, I got this one at a really cool record store called Mistake by the Lake in Cleveland, Ohio. Salute to those 2 record stores. Boy, talk about 8-tracks, and the comments just roll right in. Somebody wants to know if I've done a comp on TPOS of the minimum wage renditions. Kind of, sort of. I've done 1 volume of the cheap Beatles exploitation records, which is awesome. The compilation I made has got a mixture of really, really bad cover versions of Beatles songs with really, really, really bad Beatles sound-alike songs, with the usual plethora of just like utterly pointless filler that they would throw on these records, like old leftovers from old obsolete twist records and cha-cha records that they would fob off as being by the Bugs or the Liverpool Lads or the Mersey Boys, stuff like that. So yes, I've made one entire compilation of nothing but cheesy, sleazy Beatles exploitation records. And if you want one, either on cassette or CD, hit me up. I will be very happy to do a fair exchange of dollars for senseless music. Way into it. If you don't want to go direct, look up TPOS on Discogs, Facebook, Bandcamp, eBay. I infest all internet marketplaces. What else did I find while I was in the field? Well, hit a couple of really cool record shops in Cleveland, including one of my favorite stops, My Mind's Eye in Cleveland. Charles, if you're out there, hello, Charles. Always a pleasure to do business with you. Found a few 45s that made me very, very happy. First one, anytime, baby. Anytime you see the name Andre Williams on a record, you better pick it up, because it is just about guaranteed to be awesome. And this one, guess what, is awesome. The B-side, Soul Groove, pretty cool instrumental, kind of generic, but it's got a great drum sound to it. The A-side, Pearl Time, which is basically a rewrite, updating of his immortal song Bacon Fat. If you know how Bacon Fat goes, you know how Pearl Time goes, but it's updated for 1967. He makes a point of name-checking the year 1967 in this. So it's basically Bacon Fat with like a dirtier, nasty-sounding bass and like a somewhat funkier 60s rhythm to it, and of course all new lyrics, which are ever so slightly lascivious, double entendres. But yeah, Andre Williams. Woo, very happy to have this one. Andre Williams, Clarence Reed. Anytime I see those names on a 45, I just nab it immediately. No questions asked. If I don't already have it, that is. But of course, if I do already have it and I can get it for the right price and flip it to you people, I'll pick it up. This is what I do. I go out looking for records all over this great land of ours. Here's another one, man. This is one of these things that I didn't know anything about it. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know who Lorenzo Smith is, but I just knew that the title, Too Much Firewater, automatically made it of interest to me. So I asked the people at Mistake by the Lake Records if they would play it for me. They said yes. Turned out it was a winner. So I ended up trading some TPOS product for this great 45 of Too Much Firewater. Look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's one of those great 50s instrumentals with ethnic sound effects. Really, really cheesy, really, really wonderful. And the B-side's actually a pretty good ballad, Looking In from the Outside, which is all about people second-guessing this guy's love affair and him telling them to just basically shut up and leave him alone. Pretty decent ballad. Really good production on this one. Lorenzo Smith. And this is actually Lorenzo Smith with Little Willie Parker. I guess he's the vocalist on this side. And Lorenzo Smith is the band leader on this side. I live for this stuff, man. I live for it. And this is one Mike Lesser, if you're paying attention, I hope you are. I was waxing rhapsodic a few episodes ago on Tent Talks Tunes about a 45 that I have been just gaga over for years and years and years. A 45 called I Want Justice by Jimmy Hughes. And Mike Lesser, my pal from Florida way back when, lead singer of the Gay Cowboys in Bondage, whose entire catalog I have reissued on TPOS, which if you haven't gotten it by now, you should get it, because Gay Cowboys in Bondage were very influential on me, very inspiring for a young Malcolm Tent when he was just finding his punk rock feet. I have now reissued the Gay Cowboys' entire catalog on one cassette or one CD for your listening and purchasing convenience. Look it up. The Gay Cowboys in Bondage, Complete Silliness Discography. Anyway, I posted about Jimmy Hughes, and Mike said, have you ever heard Neighbor Neighbor by Jimmy Hughes? I had not. He sent me a YouTube clip. I flipped out. I put that record on my want list, and by gum, I had to go all the way to Cleveland, Ohio to find a copy, but I did. Thank you, Mike Lesser, for turning me on to this song. I am now the proud owner of an actual vinyl 45 of Neighbor Neighbor by Jimmy Hughes, which also has a really good B-side called It's a Good Thing. And Neighbor Neighbor is kind of like the Lorenzo Hughes song. It's Jimmy Hughes telling his neighbors to back off. He doesn't care if his woman's bad news. You just mind your own business. And the B-side is apparently about that relationship. It's a good thing. And by the sound of this, I am willing to guess, just by the sound of the horn section on this, I'm willing to guess that this was recorded at the same session as I Want Justice. It's got a very similar sound to it. So I don't know if any internet researchers out there, if any of the internet research team out there knows the answer to that. Barry Soltz, if you're watching, do you know anything about this Jimmy Hughes record and the B-side? I'd be very curious to know, because it's dynamite, man. Jimmy Hughes is one of those guys who, in my book, should have been huge. That's now 2 great 45s by him that I've been able to pick up in reality. Another one I found, this one I got in Buffalo at a really cool shop called Black Dots. It's not a rare record by any means. I've already got it, but this one's to flip. This is one that you people need if you don't already have it. New Wave Classic, baby. Money by the Flying Lizards. 1981. I remember when this record came out, the big rumor going around that it cost $20 to record, and it was made with nothing but pots and pans. That was like the word on the street. So that, hearing that, I immediately needed to have it for myself. I just went out, and the first copy I found at whatever record store it was, I paid the 99 cents for it and took it home and was not disappointed. And then it started getting played on the radio all over the place. Awesome song, man. Flying Lizards, true, underrated, unsung heroes of the new wave. David Cunningham being the brains behind the Flying Lizards. Yes, if you're a dumb teenager in South Florida, like I was, I mean, I never believed that it was actually recorded for $20 with pots and pans, but I love the idea that maybe it was. It's actually very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated, stripped down recording, totally based in Jamaican dub techniques. It's not reggae, it's not dub, but the entire foundation of the recording style of the Flying Lizards is dub. And that is this is for sale, by the way, if anybody wants this really cool 45. It's not expensive at all. $4 plus shipping gets it. So good. That led me to getting a copy of the Flying Lizards LP. This one's mine. This one's not for sale, unless I've got one in my stock, which I might. An entire album of awesome dub-influenced minimalist new wave. This record kills. This is what the year 1981 is all about for me. This is my personal copy. For some strange reason, this has a Bearsville stamp on the back. Todd Rundgren's record label, Bearsville. It's not very well done, and my Camera's kind of low res, but it's got a Bearsville stamp on the back. I don't know what's up with that. Maybe somebody out there knows. What else did I pick up while I was out there in the so-called real world of the Midwest? This one's for sale. You better believe it. This is one of those records that is so sublimely funny. I didn't get it. Like, I'd heard this record when I was really young because I'd read about it, and I picked it up and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand why people thought it was so funny. But then years later, listening to it with the critical ear, I understood that the Masked Marauders album is a work of genius. Long story short, some magazine in the 1960s wrote about a legendary mythological jam session between Mick Jagger, Jerry Garcia, Bob Dylan, and who knows who else, Eric Clapton maybe. You know, because of course that was the thing in the late 60s, the superstar jam session. Very, very few of which, if they ever occurred at all, produced anything of value. You know, just because you throw 5 legendary assholes together in a room and have them play Johnny B. Good for a half hour doesn't mean it's going to be good. It's usually a bunch of wank-offs for 30 minutes, and who cares about Eric Clapton anyway, but I'm not going to get started on that. Anyway, they wrote this totally fictitious article about the supposedly legendary jam session, and wouldn't you know it, people started saying, well, where is this? We want to hear this. Are there any tapes? Are there records? Come on, where is this legendary jam session? So the writers of this magazine said, well, if the people want it, we'll give it to them. And so they concocted their own legendary jam session with Mick Jagger and Jerry Garcia and Bob Dylan and whoever else they were supposedly lampooning. I mean, it's funny. It is so funny. Songs like I Can't Get No Nookie, more or less Hudsons Bay again. An absolutely pointless. How long is this version of Season of the Witch by Donovan? Absolutely pointless, like 15-minute version of Season of the Witch by Donovan. But that's the whole point. It's utter irrelevance and meandering, go nowhere bullshit is what makes it so great. You've got really bad imitations of Bob Dylan and bad imitations of Mick Jagger and bad imitations of Jerry Garcia's guitar playing. This is great. I love this record. If you're a fan of the absurd, I recommend this very highly. I've already got my copy. If you decided that you need the Masked Marauders, hit me up, because I got one for you. I'm sure it's on YouTube, and you can look it up, and you can hear what I'm talking about, man. It is funny. If you don't want to buy it from me online, come visit me at the Punk Rock Flea on October 23rd. I'll probably have it with me if no one buys it before then. Here's another one. I talked about this one a couple of weeks ago, maybe. Very, very strange record, and then also a very, very bad record. Bad, though, for a whole different set of reasons than why all the other records I showed you that were really bad are bad. This record's bad for a different reason. Tiny Tim, Concert in Fairyland. Man, this record is bad. You know why this record is bad? I'll tell you why this record is bad. Excuse me, this record is bad because it was recorded in 1962, before 6 years before Tiny Tim had a hit, before anybody knew who he was. He was just a struggling musician in New York City. He was there in Greenwich Village at the same time as Bob Dylan, and the same time as Phil Oakes, at the same time as John Sebastian, at the same time as Dave Van Ronk. He was there with all those guys. That's the very little known part of the Tiny Tim story. He was absolutely part of that scene in New York City in the early 60s. And somewhere along the line, somebody saw him and decided to record an album with him. And at the time, he was going under the name of Derry Dover and the Cliffs. Tiny Tim, that name hadn't come about yet. Excuse me, he was still Derry Dover. So he goes into the studio and records this album, but as is absolutely typical in Tiny Tim's story, and this happens over and over and over again in the Tiny Tim story, something happened to sour the relationship between him and the producers, so he deliberately and willfully sings totally off time and totally off key. He sabotaged the recording, and probably at the end of it said, well, ha ha ha, that'll show them. They'll never release it now, which is exactly where it would have stayed, except 6 years later, he gets a great big hit with Tiptoe Through the Tulips on Warner Brothers Reprise Records, and he's on TV everywhere, he's in every magazine everywhere, and the people who bankrolled this thing said, oh yeah, that guy. We remember him, we've got an album of his. We're going to put it out now. And apparently they approached Warner Brothers and said, look, for $15,000, you can have it. And Warner Brothers said, no, we don't want it. So this consortium of investors, the people who bankrolled Derry Dover in 1962, created a label called Bouquet. And I am 98.6% sure this is the only record that ever came out on Bouquet, except for the whatever singles they released off of this album. Created a label, put together some cover art, which of course the back is absolutely deliberately reminiscent of the back of his first album, God Bless Tiny Tim. Overdubbed some horrendous fake applause and a laugh track all over it, and released it when Tiny Tim was at the very height of his success. And by doing so, quite possibly helped to completely torpedo Tiny Tim's career. Because listening to this, you would definitely think that Tiny Tim was a bad joke. It's this guy singing out of tune, out of rhythm, with a laugh track on it. I mean, you would absolutely think that Tiny Tim was just a damn joke listening to this record. And apparently the 100,000 or so people who did buy this record in the wake of Tiptoe Through the Tulips thought he was a bad joke. And therefore, nobody bought his official second album, which came out a few months after this. And that was really about the end of Tiny Tim's career as a mainstream performer. So this record is very difficult to listen to. It's damn near impossible to listen to, but it is historically fascinating. If you are as spellbound by the Tiny Tim story as I am, you need this record. You got to listen to it at least once just to see what Tiny Tim in 1962 was up to when he was in Greenwich Village along with all those other guys, the Bob Dylan and the Oaks and the Van Ronk and the Smothers Brothers and all those people. Historically fascinating. This one's for sale because I already got my copy of it. This is a duplicate. This is how I make my living, by selling very bad Tiny Tim records to people who appreciate the very bad. Did I say that I love arcane formats? Of course I love arcane formats. So when I was at, I think it was Black Dot's record in Buffalo, I of course had to pick up a copy of Are We Not Men, We Are DEVO on CD, because after all these years, I still don't have Are We Not Men on CD. And for $4.99 in trade, there was no way I could say no. So yes, as I told the guy behind the counter, it's come to this. Me collecting CDs. 8-tracks, CDs. I got it all, baby. I got it all. I'm a very lucky guy. So that's what I was doing before and after Devotional. Of course, at the Devotional, there was a lot of action, baby. I can talk about this now because it is now officially released. But I was very happy to be the executive producer for a genuine bona fide DEVO-related release on my label, TPOS! Yes, a compact disc called Devoted. I teased it a little bit a few weeks ago, but now it can be told. This was a giveaway that we concocted for the first night of Devotional. It's got front cover art by Michael Pilmer, who has been a key linchpin of Devotional since day one, since before day one. He's one of the co-founders of it. He did the front cover art. Rising young devotee Sophia Swangle did the back cover art. A young dude named Jackson from the really great Devo inspired band Fight Milk did the inside panel. I did the other inside panel. And our good pals from the Fantastic Plastics did the actual CD art. We made 200 of them, and we gave every single blessed one of them away the first night of Devotional to the first people who were in through the door. What's on it? Live recordings recorded by me and with a little bit of help from my friends of past performances at Devotional, including, let's see what's on this thing. We got Race of Doom by the Super Thing, which is the Devo in-house tribute band with many special guests. Gut Feeling and Gates of Steel by the Super Thing with special guest David Kendrick on the drums. And then tracks 4, 5, and 6, Automodown, Beehive, and Beautiful World. Automodown and Beehive, an actual recording of Jerry Casale and Bob Lewis live together on stage for the first time in 40-ish years. Bob Lewis being the other co-founder of DEVO. Yes, it was Bob Lewis and Jerry Casale who came up with DEVO before Mark Mothersbaugh. Mark Mothersbaugh gave the group focus. He gave it a face. He gave it the actual, genuine musical genius that it needed. But the basic idea existed before Mark. So Bob Lewis and Jerry actually got on stage and did a couple of numbers. Tapes were rolling. And then that very same night, Jerry, David Kendrick, Scott Orsi, who was another key player at Devotional, and little old me got up and did Beautiful World as a 4-piece band on stage at Devotional. If I had to pinpoint the best 8.5 minutes of my life up to that time, that was it. And it was recorded and has now been released. And if you were there at Devotional first night, I hope you got one. If you weren't there at Devotional first night, I'm sorry if you didn't get one. I don't have them. I have none. They were all distributed. So you can either be happy or not. The good news, if you missed it, is that it's not quite the end for that particular release just yet. All I'm going to say is keep your eye on the future. Because when you got stuff that good, you can't just let it disappear after one night. I'm just saying. Just saying. Yeah, let's see. What else do you get when you're at the Devotional? We get set lists. Here's a set list from Weird Paul, who played the same night that I did. Set list from the Akronauts, who played the same night that I did. A set list from Morgan Pre-Cum, who played the same night that I did. I didn't get any set lists from Saturday. I don't know why that is. Only from Friday. How about this? From my good pal Toth Wilder, a flyer for a Michigan Potato Festival. Look at that. It's in Polish, too. At least some of it. Beautiful, beautiful artistic rendition of a potato on that. Very, very happy. Oh, we got autographs. I had to get all my stuff signed, of course. In years gone by, I've had various members of DEVO sign things. This year I got Rod Reuter to sign, and of course we got Mark to sign the back. So now I've got a fairly complete set of autographs, as complete as it's ever going to get for this Dr. Detroit single. Another highlight is the DEVO Live Mongoloid Years CD, which I have gotten, I Pretty sure everybody on this who's still alive signed this. Bob Lewis signed the front. General Boy, Bob 1, Jim Mothersbaugh, and now as of the other night, Mark. Who else signed this? Of course, Jerry. Did I get Rod to sign this? I don't know if I got Rod to sign this. He's not on it, so I didn't really do that. But basically everybody, Bob 2's not on it because he's not with us anymore, and of course Alan's not on it because he's not with us anymore. But all the surviving members who perform on this thing are on it. It reminds me, I got to get Murray Saul's autograph on this. Reminder to self. And then, of course, a few other things autographed. Since David Kendrick was there and Mark was there, we got kind of the same deal. An almost complete set of autographs from the total DEVO lineup. I'm only missing Bob 1 on this. And since Bob 1 is still with us, the odds are pretty good. We got General Boy, who signed the back a bunch of years ago. So that's really cool. These are all mine, by the way. I ain't selling these. I've said with many people who have asked about my autographed items, man, if you see any of these on the market, you'll know that either the homeless shelter just increased its nightly rate, or I'm dead. General Boy, Mark, Jerry, Bob 2. This is what makes a fanboy's heart flutter. Here's one that's got Rod and Jerry and Mark. Man, oh man, oh man, oh. Personal collection material right here, kids. I will also mention, there's another giveaway they had, the DEVO Beautiful World, a brand new version of it, recorded with live drums and live bass. Pretty good. Pretty good. Of course, it's not all about the receiving. I have to be like Mr. DNA. I have to be altruistic. I debuted a brand new Malcolm Tent album. Excuse me, sold every copy on CD that I had. This is the CD version of the Malcolm Tent Unwanted DEVO collection. These are the songs I played Friday night. If you've been watching the internet, you've seen the buzz maybe that I played a set of nothing but DEVO's most unwanted, unliked, unpopular, totally reviled songs. And the people seemed to dig the concept. It went over very well. I mean, the response was great. My original, because I was asked to play Friday night to open up Devotional, and usually Devotional, which is spread out over 2 nights, has the first night in the small room at the Beachland Ballroom, the Beachland Tavern, which holds about 100, and then the main event is at the Beachland Ballroom, which holds about 500. This year, ticket sales were so good that we did both nights in the Beachland Ballroom, which was awesome. But prior to that, I had made my plans for having to play a set to a bar crowd, basically 100 people or so wedged into a bar, many of whom hadn't seen each other in a year, a number of whom who had never met in person before, all of them drinking. And, you know, that's fine. It's festivities. That's what it's all about, partly. But I'm going to be the guy on stage trying to play. And I resolved pretty quickly that there's no way I was going to go up there and try to do battle with a loud, noisy room with just one acoustic guitar. You know, as much as I've got my super charisma and my personality plus, there's no way I'm going to get a couple of people who are meeting for the first time in person, you know, after being internet friends for years. I'm not going to make them stop talking and pay attention to some guy on the stage. They're having fun, you know. So I figured, okay, there's no way I'm going to be able to beat him with one acoustic guitar, so I'll make it really loud and really powerful and really obnoxious, and I'll just bulldoze them. And it won't matter if they want to talk, because I won't be able to hear them. So the idea to do it with an electric guitar and some kind of rhythm popped into my head. And then from there, it just sort of naturally gravitated toward doing deep DEVO cuts, because God bless all the bands who play at Devotional. But I'm just going to say, just one man's opinion here, that after 2 days of live bands doing lots of DEVO songs, I don't ever want to hear Uncontrollable Urge ever again. I don't ever want to hear Girl You Want ever again. You know, there's a few others like that. Just saying. So I said, we're not going to do any of those. We're going to go for the real deep cuts. And the deeper I got, the more I got into the territory of songs that people just don't like. There are DEVO songs that even rabid DEVO fans such as myself just plain old don't like. So I decided to focus on those and do a set of nothing but them. And that apparently caught people's fancy because there was a lot of buzz about it. And then a couple of days, like a few days before I was getting ready to go to Devotional, I got an email from the aforementioned David Kendrick, drummer extraordinaire, and he said, "Hey man, I heard you're doing this set. Mind if I join you on a couple of songs?" I'm like, that would be cool, you know, doing these unwanted DEVO songs with a rhythm machine would be festive, but doing it with a real drummer is even more festive. So I did some brainstorming. We went back and forth a little bit. I sent him a bunch of demos via email. We concocted a set, and we ended up doing it with no real rehearsal. No rehearsal really at all. The rehearsal consisted of me and him sitting in the front seat of my car behind the venue listening to this CD, and him taking notes with a piece of paper and a pen, and then running through like half of one song and half of another song at sound check. And that was it. We were basically winging it. And I mean, that's like the excitement of live performance, when you really don't know what you're doing and you're totally trusting each other. Like, I'm totally trusting David Kendrick to know what to do, and he's totally trusting me to be able to lead the charge, so to speak. And man, that guy is such a top shelf musician that it worked. It clicked. It was great. Now, while all this is going on, while this whole thing is happening, I arrive at the venue on Friday to do load-in, and people come up to me and say, "Hey man, Mark's here, and Mark's coming down, he wants to check out your set." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." But people kept saying that, you know, like people in authority. Like, "Yeah man, Mark's really curious about what you want to do. He says he's coming down, he wants to check out your set." I'm like, "Well, that's great. I hope he does. It'd be very nice, but you know, me and David got to hash out the songs. We have to do all this stuff. So we'll eat that spud when we get to it." And I pretty much kind of forgot about it until I'm on stage, you know, doing my thing. Ooh, baby, yeah, 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 yeah. When I look out, not only do we have a nice full house in the big room at the Beachland Ballroom, and everybody's getting into it and singing along, and it's a good thing. It's really happening. And oh yeah, Mark is there watching. All right, cool. So now I have to be good. I have no choice. Like I already have no choice. I already have to be good, but now I just gotta. You know, I've got to follow my genetic imperative and just maximize. We did the set. Afterwards, Mark comes up to the stage and says, "You played those songs better than DEVO does. You know, if we had played those songs that good, maybe people would have liked them." And I was like, "I'm sorry. I apologize." I apologized for playing the songs, quote, "better than DEVO," unquote. And that was just like a very, very nice way to end the set. That sort of put the fizz in my moxie, you know, getting to play with a world-class drummer like David Kendrick and having a really nice audience who was really into it and was participating and, you know, doing their thing, and then have the public face of DEVO say, thumbs up. That, my friends, was cool. That was a career highlight for yours truly. So I am very, very happy to be able to report to you that this happened. And who knows what's going to happen next year, man. I'm excited to find out. So, in a nutshell, if you guys want to hear the unwanted DEVO songs, I got the CD. I got it on cassette. You can own on physical medium your own copy of Unwanted DEVO. I sold every copy of the CD I had at the devotional, but I've made more. And I sold most of the cassettes, but I made more. So they are available. Write to me directly if you want them. I haven't put them on Discogs yet or eBay. I will eventually, but for now, if you want one, talk to me. Officially got the thumbs up from the man himself. And if you also want to relive the glories of past collaborations between me and David Kendrick, when we did our original Malcolm Tent power duo back in 2017, he and I did 2 songs from one of the DEVO albums he plays on. He was on Smooth Noodle Maps. We did 2 songs from Smooth Noodle Maps, Spin the Wheel and DEVO Has Feelings Too. Hand-lathed, lo-fi mono version. It still sounds pretty good, but technically it's called lo-fi mono version. 30 copies made, only 30. This is the 3rd printing. It's got a brand new back cover. I think I have 1 copy left of the 2nd printing. Yep, I got 1 copy left of the 2nd printing, which has a different back cover. Transparent. Oh, and I forgot. 2nd printing is square. The 2nd printing is square. 25 copies made of these, square. White sleeve. 3rd printing, different back cover. One of 4 colored sleeves, and it's round. Sold a few of these at Devotional. I've got still some left. So if y'all want some of this action, talk to me. I'd be very happy to hook you up. I will also trade for Tiny Tim records, or DEVO records, or really crappy old Truck Stop 8 tracks. Got it on CD too, with a bonus interview that I did with David Kendrick on my radio show back in 2017. So, career highlights galore. I want to thank everybody for listening to my story of my recent trip out to Ohio and all points in between. I forgot to mention too, one last thing. Next week on Tent Talks Tunes, a special live performance. Live in the studio performance by me. It's part of my post-birthday bash. I like to do a performance every year on my birthday. And the stars have lined up so that my birthday is day after tomorrow. Tent Talks Tunes is the Wednesday after that. So next Tent Talks Tunes is a special live in the studio performance by yours truly. What's it going to be? I'll let you know. You just keep an eye on that internet for details as they unfold. Thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Lord willing and the creeks don't rise, I'll be back in 167 hours with something special cooked up for all you people. Until then, this guy is this guy who is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.